Yes, Peter Mead, and welcome to the Australian Search Marketing Academy webinar for SEMrush. And thank you so much for joining us, especially at this extraordinary time in the world events. We're all in the same boat and it's really tough. But I also want to personally acknowledge all those who are doing it really tough at this time. And but today we will be talking about how to increase your traffic through the knowledge graph with Dixon Jones and our co-host with Nick Ranger. And
Howdy hoodly.
how are you, Nick? And how are you going, Dixon?
I'm fine. I'm fine, Peter. How you doing? Oh, forget that. Just carry on going.
I'll just for anyone who doesn't know Dixon, I'll give a background here. So Dixon is the CEO of inlinks.net, a tool that uses topics and entities rather than keywords to help optimize sites and content. He's probably best known as the guy who brought Majestic to the market, which has even won awards from the Queen and has personally received multiple awards, including SEO Personality of the Year, and was the first ever winner of a Lifetime Achievement Award at the UK Search Awards. He started SEO in 1999 and has run businesses on both the agency side and the tool side. And Dixon indeed is one of the founding fathers of SEO as we know it, and a personal mentor of mine. I follow a lot of things Dixon says. So, Dixon, thank you
very
so
kind
much
of you.
for joining us.
I realize now that I've alienated 50% of Australians by mentioning the Queen.
But in saying that, you could literally not get anyone more authoritative on this. So thank you so much for being here.
I don't think anybody's authoritative right now, but I think we're all in the SEO world. We're all learning this together. So,
Wonderful sentiment.
Absolutely. Well, I'll introduce Nick. So Nick is an SEO specialist overseeing digital strategy, data analysis, content, and site architecture for large enterprises and local businesses. Nick focuses on data-driven results and is known for her strong technical SEO auditing ability, researching user intent and finding opportunities in competitive industries. Nick's also big in the Australian SEO community, organising meetups and the new DMU Slack group for us here in Australia. So, and also works with me at Studio Hawk. So, go Nick. Thank you so much for joining us.
Lovely to be here, and shout out to everyone who is currently working from home. If you're not working from home, what are you doing? But at the same time, it is truly phenomenal to be here. DMU is Digital Marketing United. That is a Slack group that we have organized to bring the community together and be able to have everyone have a conversation, share what's going on, and be able to connect with people, especially if you're having a bit of strife and issues. So it's awesome. And of course, because we're here with SEMrush, and we're on YouTube, if you I know we haven't got into it yet, but hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and put any comments in the links below, in the comments below, because we will be answering questions at the end of Dixon's awesome presentation.
Absolutely. And thanks so much for co-hosting. So today we want to know, okay, how
knowledge graphs.
I mean,
yeah, me too. Absolutely, me too.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're ready to start, shall we just jump into it?
Yeah. Okay, guys. So I'll pull in here now. I'm rubbish on timing, so somebody jump in and tell me if I'm going over my time, if you don't mind.
You may jump in and ask a few questions as you're going to help us clarify certain things.
Right. Okay. So sharing a screen, and hopefully we're here. Okay. Full screen. Can you see that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's good. Okay. So, guys, I'm it's lovely to be called the world expert, or but I don't think that's a true in the slightest. I think this whole move towards entities is something that's changing the SEO world from the ground up, and we're all learning this together. So if I make a slip up here and somebody technically knows something better, then I'm happy to discuss after in the comments and the chats. But we're going to talk about entity-based SEO or approaching SEO from the point of view of strings, not things. So this all really kind of goes around the idea of the knowledge graph and or the semantic web. So what the knowledge graph is really trying to solve is this idea that the web has got so big that relational databases and the old style of trying to put all the web pages in and reading all the web pages and then suddenly returning results that go directly to the web pages is kind of getting a little bit problematic, even for a mammoth beast like Google. So the idea of a knowledge graph, for me anyway, is a good way to see it is a massive encyclopedia where it can create a single point of truth. The thing is that everything, there can be many ways to, many pages on how to tie a bow tie. But in truth, there's only, one or two ways to tie a bow tie. So if the world's information is stored more in an encyclopedia sort of way, in a way that machines can also read quite easily, then it changes the nature of the information. And so I see the knowledge graph as a list of topics, things, or entities rather than web pages. And I think for SEOs, it's all about how we get our information interacting with that single point of truth, and how information moves between those two data points. The interesting thing about this idea of a single point of truth is that it makes things much quicker for the search engines, but it may lose an awful lot of color in the information that it's got because it's dumbing down information. We might talk about that a bit later. One of the pluses, though, of a single point of truth is once they've got their own database, they can then also use other data sources to augment that as well. So a music lyric database, or they can manually put in things, or they can have a look at internal data that the owner of that database may also have. So there's a huge amount of other ways of storing and moving information once they're using their own semi-structured data set rather than an unstructured data set like the internet. For SEOs, though, the challenge is going to be, I think the challenge right now is getting data into the single point of truth. So trying to get your brand into there, or trying to get your name into there, or trying to get your product into there. But the truth of the matter is that once we've figured out how to do that properly, it's getting customers back. The problem with this whole knowledge base idea, or the knowledge graph, Google's knowledge graph, is once they've sucked all the information into this massive, great big single point of truth, what incentive have they got to give it back, give the customer back to us? And I think that's going to be the ultimate strategic problem for SEOs as we move through 2021. So entities, I think, are a big part of Google's game. They've been moving towards this for some years, and it's been a philosophical argument or discussion or meritocracy between competing ideas. The old PageRank idea versus the entity idea within Google, and different technologies have been fighting in the SERPs, I think, and fighting in the halls of Google. But if you look at who's now running Google, now that Larry and Sergey have moved on, and we've got new people in Google, their backgrounds at the head of the thing are much more semantic and entity based than previously. So it would appear that entities are starting to win out, and you can see a way in which Google is changing just by going to the old Google Trends system. If you go to Google's Trends and start typing something in, I typed in internet marketing without a G, and now you can see that underneath you've got different ideas. You've got search terms, but you've also got topics coming back as well, and ideas. So there's an internet marketing company and stuff coming back. So Google's Google Trends is now delivering a lot more information around topics than it used to do before, and it's differentiating between a search term and a topic. So as soon as I get to the concept of internet marketing with a G, it knows that there's 3 different ideas all around internet marketing, and they're considered topics, they're considered entities, and they're saying it. So it means that, it really depends on whether you're going to be an entity. So Bill Hartz is a good friend of mine, and he has he was bright enough to go and get himself into Freebase before he got bought by Google, and that's all translated into him being an entity, and he's identified as an internet marketer. It's not easy though, because type in Dixon Jones and there is an entity, but unfortunately it's a set of architects in London, and the fact that they designed the Royal Opera House really doesn't impress me very much. What annoys me is that it's them, not me, that's the entity for Dixon Jones. So my point is that it's just knowing this stuff doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make me an entity just because I know this stuff.
This is the source of anxiety for a lot of us who want ourselves to be there with our name there instead, right?
Yeah, well, I think we have to get over it a little bit. We've either got to become famous enough to deserve an entity, or we've got to get over it. I mean, I haven't got an entity, and it's very annoying for me. But especially when you try to talk about entities, but also it's an exercise in humility, I think, and you work with it, really. If anybody's a Wikipedia genius over there and wants to just, set me up as a Wikipedia page without me getting banned, that'd be great. But I suspect it's not going to work. So, I've never yet. Sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say it's a good time, actually. Well, I'd like to mention, because I was quite impressed. Nick's got a great entity, Nick Ranger. So.
Yeah,
it's looking really good lately. So
that's actually a featured snippet. But I do have a knowledge graph for my band, Dada Ono.
So the band entry is a really good way. If we carry on chatting like this is great. I might not get to the end of the presentation, by the way, but that's okay. But the band entry is really interesting because Lily Ray's done the same, and Jason Barnard's done the same. So there are other SEOs, and the SEOs that are in there, a lot of them have got through their music connections. So it's a very good way into the knowledge graph, I think.
Nice tip. Okay.
Yeah, or write a book. That's what I've got to do next, I think. And I'm serious about that. I think you've got to do something a little bit more than webinars, probably. But that's all I've done so far. Okay, so Google Suggest now. If you're going to use Google Suggest, a quick one here. Careful not to compare. I'm sorry, I can't spell different types of data with each other if you're going to use Google Suggest now, because it's now blending different ideas, search terms, and topics together. So be a little bit careful about that. Otherwise, you're going to be comparing apples and oranges. Anyway, so. Leads me on to question 1. Why is the move to the entity-based model so pressing for Google? It's really this idea that every URL has multiple ideas or topics or concepts in the content, but there are only there are much less topics and ideas in the world, it turns out, than there are pages on the internet. So if you use something like Majestic, for example, it's seen 8.5 trillion URLs, whereas if you use Inlinks to look at entities, Inlinks has about 2.5 million entities, or Wikipedia, probably the largest entity database on the planet, has around about 5.9 million entities in English as of the end of the year. So the difference is, you've got one database with 6 million entities, and the other one with 8.5 trillion entities, records. So looking at the world with an entity-based viewpoint is 1,400 times smaller in terms of the number of records. So it's a huge saving in scale. So it's taking the database from trillions of records to millions or billions of records. So this is why I think it's such an important thing for Google to work at. Secondly, entities do help Google go much deeper with a lot less repetition. So you can start to create schema, and once they've got a record, then they can enrich the record and find out a lot more information about that individual record. And the third thing is, as we've all been told for the last few years, for things like voice responses and for AI decisions, once Google or a search engine has a single point of truth, then it can put things into a much more machine readable form, and then they can convert that into text so you can have the answer whilst you're driving your car and that sort of thing. So Entity Orientated Search is a book by Christian Ballard, and I found this a really interesting book when I was trying to get to grips with a lot of this stuff, and I'm going to put him down as a world authority on this stuff, because I think he's a lot cleverer than I am. But one of the things he did was a chapter on Wikipedia's page structure, and it's really interesting. I don't know if anybody wants to chat in the put some answers in the comments, but this is the web page on Wikipedia. Sorry, this is the search results for the phrase virtual reality on Wikipedia. And as with everything on the right-hand side, it's a knowledge graph, and Wikipedia's there. And the first result in the organic results is a Wikipedia entry. So Wikipedia is prolific, of course. And this is the actual page for virtual reality. So if you would like to guess how many words are in the virtual reality article for Wikipedia here, put them down. I can tell you it's more than 2,000. So put it down. Put a number there between 2,000 and well, any number above 2,000. See how many words.
And no cheat.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So I'll tell you what, Nick. Do you want to guess how many words on that page?
I'm gonna take a stab at maybe 4,500.
4,500. Okay. Do you want to put one in there, Peter?
Okay. Let's. A random guess of 3,000.
Okay, so this article has 27,000 words in it.
Woo!
And I don't know quite how it ended up that long, but it's pretty well developed. The interesting thing about it is. The interesting thing about every Wikipedia article is that there is an incredible amount of structure to the whole thing. So it all starts with an entity, and it defines the entity, and the URL and the entity are almost always exactly the same. It then sits there and says, then there's a little info box with an image and stuff if they can, so it's something that fits in a nice little featured snippet. Then there's some disambiguation, and that's all even before they've just put the summary in there, and that's on every single article. Okay, sometimes they don't have any need for disambiguation, sometimes they don't have a one box, but every article is trying to create the same structure. And then there's all this in the contents before you even get to the main content. There's a heck of a lot of content here, and let's go past that. Okay, so sorry, that's too much information there. When you start looking at the content within there as well on Wikipedia, the thing that strikes me looking at the source code or the DOM is that all of the internal links, there are so many links on a Wikipedia page. It's just not true. So this idea that, we want to keep all the page rank on our page, we want to link out with without carefully. Well, Wikipedia doesn't seem to. They're quite happy linking out. In fact, they like linking out. Admittedly, they are linking to their own pages, but they also are quite happy to do external links as well. And there's usually quite a lot of external links and stuff. And some of the external links are actually in the main body in this article as well. So they're not scared to link out. And every page is the same. And I think that there's we're not paying enough attention to outgoing links. Bill Slawski, keeps on, showing us patents, the Google patents and stuff. But one of those is the Reasonable Surfer patent, which it took the PageRank idea and said, right, each a random surfer doesn't click on links equally. They do it in a reasonable manner, and they're more likely to click on some links than other links. So one of the things I thought about, I'll just checking my time. Am I all right for time, guys?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
So
engrossed.
I have asked myself, how might a computer change the value of each outbound link on a page? What kind of things can a beast like Google measure? So one of the things that Majestic does now is it divides a web page into 40 different sections, and it looks at the internal links in each of those sections and the external links in each of those sections. And it turns out that different kinds of websites have very, very different patterns. So on the left-hand side, you've got a Wikipedia article where it is very, very happy to do internal linking. And it does do external linking, but most of those external links are near the bottom of the page. And whereas on the right-hand side, you've got the other extreme, the Drudge Report. And just looking at this, it's a Drudge Report, appears to be a complete list of external links. And I don't know anything about the Drudge Report, but I'm already saying that I think that that's a bit spammy. And I think that you see things this way, and it suddenly takes context into things. So one of the ways in which you can start measuring external links and how it might be important is by segmenting the page. And there's quite a lot of research out there, starting with Yahoo, about analyzing content in sections is better than analyzing the whole of a page of content. And as SEOs, we tend to look at the whole page and don't think about each paragraph in isolation. Which becomes a bit important, I think, further on. So we learned a few things here, and if we get the slides given after, then you can grab those. But the main thing is that Wikipedia is happy to link out, and links will carry out different weights. But here's the thing. Here's a big thing that changes the game for me, I think. Wikipedia's internal outlinks are all based on entities. They're not linking based on the anchor text. We've all as SEOs been thinking about anchor text, but I think that the fact that Wikipedia always links to a very defined entity, because all of their articles are by definition entities, then they don't have to worry about anchor text. And we just don't get our heads around that. We're so used to analyzing anchor text that we don't think about the content on the page that we're linking to. So what does this mean for us as SEOs? I think the first thing this means for us is we need algorithms that will convert text to entities or and that's kind of why I've kind of moved into that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to not analyze web keywords anymore. We're trying to analyze web and paragraphs and ideas in terms of topics, because that's what Google is doing. So you can go to Google, and Google have this natural language API demo, and you can cut and paste text into this natural language API. And Peter, you saw
and images too.
Christine and I. Sorry. Yeah. Images as well. I didn't know that. Okay, I'm going to go and do that next. And that kind of breaks things down into entities and ideas. And I think this is kind of interesting. It's another demonstration of how much Google's moving towards an entity-based analysis of things. So this is trying to break things down, but it's not especially good at getting entities right. It's surprising that you'd think that Google is going to be the best natural language processing system in the world, or as my friend Christine says, it's not natural language processing. She calls it natural language understanding. But the interesting thing is that they miss an awful lot of stuff, it seems. So if you take this API, for example, and run it over that 27,000 words of the virtual reality article in Wikipedia, and break it down, then the most significant entity that it sees on that content, according to, so this is just cut and paste through the article into Google's natural language API, is, funnily enough, not virtual reality, but Wikipedia, Sega VR, which I kind of find really interesting. And as soon as I saw that, I went back to the article and had a look, and Sega VR are mentioned 12 times on the virtual reality page on Wikipedia, including links and goodness knows what. So what seems to have been happening, and this happened years ago. This was not a new thing. This article has been up for years. Is that Sega seemed to have been able to move the needle on what the concept of virtual reality means, and it's taken VR from from the scientific world to the gaming and to the arts and entertainment world, I think, which is kind of interesting. It also demonstrates just how important Wikipedia editors are, and how a Wikipedia article editor can bias the knowledge base. So I'm envious of Wikipedia editors, but I'm also very, very suspicious of Wikipedia editors right now. They're kind of like,
healthy suspicion.
Yeah, so Peter and I definitely are old enough to remember DMOZ and the Open Directory project, and there's no doubt that we can manipulate the internet with the Open Directory project if you're an editor there. So it's the same thing. And the problem is, as soon as something goes into Wikipedia in error, the machine learning tends to then take things away further and starts to make if there's an error in Wikipedia, then all the machine learning based off of that trusted data set is going to also be incorrect. Or if Nick Ranger was in a different band or listed as being in a different band, then all of the knowledge data that was going to come off of that would also be related to a different band, which is kind of a worry, because if the trusted data set is wrong, then so is a lot of the machine learning as a result of that. Okay, so how do we do this as SEOs? Right, so as SEOs, I think the future is that we need to think of our websites as a knowledge base, as an entity database. So if you have a website on beer, then this is actually a poster in our pub. I mean, not that I can go to the pub anymore, and it's closed down. But I was sitting there trying to think about presentations, and this is in a pub, and I thought, you know what, that is a perfect design for a website.
I love that,
because that's how they should be. So the pubs have figured it out, so it shouldn't be too difficult for us. So you've got to think of your website as an entity database and connect things appropriately. So all of the content on the site needs to link around and talk around the same sort of subject if you can, and you have headline instances of entities. So you may have German lager may be a significant part of this website. So I think then you need to start working out what you need to talk about on different headline entities and ideas. So if I put German lager into Google, then these are the 10 sites that came up, the 10 pages that come up, and this is actually taking the 10 sites and then having a look at the topics that are mentioned on those 10 web pages that are coming up for German lager. So by using a natural language API, we can break down, and this is using the Inlinks one, not Google's one, we can break down the pages into individual topics. And then we can combine that all back into a nice little knowledge graph, so we can see what kind of topics we need to talk about to be able to be relevant in the world of German lager. And so if I take a page that should be ranking quite well, I can sit there and say, right, I've talked about lager, I've talked about Germany, I've talked about beer, I've talked about all sorts of bits and pieces, but hey, I've not talked about hops. Maybe I should also include some information about the hops that are different within German lager. So I can click on the hops, have a look at the Wikipedia article for hops, find the topics related around hops, find related topics and various other bits and pieces. And I can use that to modify and inform my content so that I can create better content. So this is still about content. It's just approaching the problem in a different way. And then we can link ideas. And linking ideas is much, much better than linking keywords. So now I can have a page on hops that relates to the hops influences the flavor, which influences the beer style. Or blonde is a color of beer that's kind of orange, which is the color of witchcraft beer, for example. So now we're relating ideas instead of relating keywords. Does that make sense, guys?
Yes, it does. Do you, at some point, will you also explain how the anchor text will differ If we're
So
linking,
well, once you've got the anchor text, once you've got the ideas, then the anchor text becomes much less relevant. So yes, the links may still be with anchor text, but you can now still have the anchor text of click here. But because of the context in which the landing page is there and the context of the words around the anchor text, the meaning is done in that kind of way. So
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that hopefully that makes a lot of sense to our audience too, because
I hope so. But I'm happy to answer questions. But what it does mean is that you've got to then on your website decide what is the topic that is important for your for each page. You've got to link that to an entity. So I have a page that's linked, that's associated with the concept of search engine optimization on dixonjones.com, and then I can link topics to those pages. So I can, anytime I talk about SEO or search engine optimization or synonyms around that on other pages, I can then link through to the page on SEO. Okay, so. Part 2, we found out that semantic SEO communicates topic details, and we're trying to get data to and from the knowledge graph. Wikipedia suffers heavily from human bias, and I think this is going to be really important. It means that that also means that Google's knowledge graph can also suffer from human bias as well. It's tightly themed, or create tightly themed, content-rich sites. And they're going to be easier to build knowledge graphs for because they're going to be seen as expertise in their field much more, much easier than a broad site. And that goes for news sites as well. It's harder for news sites, although news sites have huge amounts of content, which adds to their ability to connect the dots compared to an e-commerce site, for example. Their disadvantage is that they tend to be broad, and so ones that have a broad set of broad mandate editorially will find it harder in this brave new world. Google have a natural language checking tool, not necessarily natural language processing checking tool, and I think that scaling internal links is something that Wikipedia does really, really well, so we should do. Okay, so we're at. I'll just one more slide. Tips and takeaways that I've got are: build your site as if it was a miniature knowledge graph. Build content pages around the knowledge graph. Build content pages around the knowledge graph created by the top pages for a given phrase. So find out what is happening in your vertical. So it's still at a keyword, but the keyword is put it into Google, find out what's coming back, and then analyze the concepts and topics that those people are talking about. Create proper topic and landing pages on your own site, and these should be your main landing pages and your main target pages for SEO. And I think that internally linking ideas rather than keywords is better than just playing around with anchor text. So I've put in a couple of stuff here as to the sources that I've been using or mentioned in the thing. If you want the slides, talk at Dixon Jones, email talk@dixonjones.com with SEMrush in the title, and that'll be there. So that's my presentation, guys. And sorry if I've kind of hogged the mic for a bit.
No. That was absolutely awesome, and I'm sure like we've got lots of awesome questions, but I just kind of want to just really just unpack that. So like one of the questions that I have like from that is one, that was great information around the anchor text, because I think there's been a lot of penalties for specific around like exact match anchor text. So if we just kind of like take the foot off that gas pedal for a moment, we can kind of acknowledge that it actually doesn't matter. Like if you just link to an entity, that is just as, if not like more authoritative than you would have if you were to rely on anchor text.
Yeah, so I think there's another way of looking at it as well, and it's always good if you can think about it from the user point of view as well as the Google point of view, because Google doesn't like it if you try and explain something from Google's point of view. But if you think about writing an article and you're trying to get authority for yourself, I mean, at the end of the presentation, I put a couple of links of where I got some of my ideas from, and I think that adds credibility to the presentation if you can say there is. you know, if you're doing a university presentation, I'll take these glasses off here. And you can see my little Indian spot here from wearing glasses too much here. So my new style. But I think if you're writing a research paper, you wouldn't dream of writing a research paper without citing authority sources. So if you're writing a blog article, you would cite, where you're getting your information from. So it makes sense to have outgoing links to back up your article. But if those outgoing links don't back up your article, you're not actually helping the user. You're not adding a trust signal to the user. If you're saying, oh, and the best thing to do is to go and buy that over here, that's not really helping the user. Well, it's helping the user to go and buy something, but it's not adding to your own credibility. So I think that there's two ways to look at the things. It's, yes, move away from the idea of anchor text, but it's also you put a link in there to support the argument that you're making in your own content.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
this starts to get into a bit of a tricky territory because
I'm sure.
It's a can of worms, isn't it, for all SEO people? Anchor text, things like domain authority, where links going to point to, and all these kind of things. I mean, it's just a sort of a big swimming around pool of ideas. But some of this stuff. I mean, going back specifically where you're talking about entities, the knowledge graph, the way that Google understands through the NLP, or even how we know Christine has rightly said it's NLU. And so how do we, what I'm trying to work out here is, not all websites are really interested in about publishing information on their site. A lot of websites are really kind of business sites. They're not really in the business of trying to sort of inform Google about their entities.
Sure. So, and I think if they're a product site and they're an e-commerce site, I think that they have two choices. And I suppose we've always had two choices, but choice number one, in that case, pay for the traffic. That's Google's, you want to sell something. This is a marketplace, pay for the traffic, and they're not really interested in going around that. So choice number two is to accept that in order for you to own the visitor first, instead of Google owning the visitor first, then you're going to have to create huge amounts of all words lead to the same place. All words lead to Rome. You're either going to have to, you need to create huge amounts of content, knowledge, expertise that is not directly related to a purchase. And so the best sales companies that are selling product online that are getting organic traffic also have a huge arm that says, well, I can spend £100,000 a month on PPC, or I could spend £50,000 a month on PPC and then £50,000 a month on content. You can buy a heck of a lot of content for £50,000 a month. Yeah. But that content has to be educating an audience and getting them to engage with not necessarily your product, but engage with the idea of your project. And it's, some guys that do that really, really well. Best in the industry are SEMrush. We all hang around SEMrush's videos. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the videos. It's they're at events. They're writing content. They're writing how-to articles. And yes, it feeds into their product. But a lot of people are looking at these videos without ever having a SEMrush account at all, and it still becomes hugely valuable. And they become have a close affinity with their audience. So in doing that, they win the audience over. And I think that's that's how to do it. Okay, what's Jerry said?
Yeah. The companies that buy a lot of content often do it badly. Dixon is right, though. Good quality rather than volume.
Yeah, I think that's a big point, actually. The truth of the matter is that there's only so much content, so many links on a page, or so many snippets or whatever that comes back on a Google article. So, quality is much better than quantity, and I think quality has to stand out as being the best in the world, and that's the hardest thing to do. If you are the best in the world, you will stand out.
Yeah. I have a question that I want to. Well, actually, not so much a question, but just like some new information that I want to bring to the table. Okay. So I just noticed that we've got Jason Barnard typing away in the comments. Shout out to Jason Barnard. But he tweeted today something really quite interesting that I've never seen this data anywhere before, but he actually listed sources cited in knowledge panels where he looked at, okay, for every knowledge panel that's actually getting into the SERP, where are their sources coming from? So he found that like 55.76% of the time. Sorry, I've got the data up here. 55.7. It's Wikipedia, as you were talking about. 33% of the time there is no source, and 3% of the time there is. With crunchbase.com, and then it sort of gets varying degrees of 2-1%, like with LinkedIn and Bloomberg, Reuters. I can't say that, but but I think that's so interesting, because a lot of the companies that I'm seeing knowledge graphs get knowledge graphs. Sorry, they don't have. So I'm thinking, all right, well, it's probably from their brand authority. It's probably from their content. It's probably from how users and Google understands them as an entity in themselves, and that's why that they're getting them.
So Jason's list is really interesting, because he's been tracking that for years, and so it absolutely top notch kind of top notch list. I think what's kind of interesting is that I looked at things in that list, and I think what's interesting, and Jason might disagree, is that trying to get into that list isn't necessarily easy, even if you've got the list. It seems to me that the seed set of certainly Wikipedia as a seed, or Wikidata as a seed set, is still there as a seed set. And I think good news feeds are seed sets, and you can get into a knowledge graph through good news feeds as well. And you're in there through music. So IMDb is also is one that probably feeds a seed set. I assume, are you in IMDb somewhere, Nick?
I believe that I have a band. I've got Spotify. Yep. I've got I've signed up for Bandcamp, and I don't know. Yeah. I've just been.
I bet your name's somewhere. Yeah. So
I've been a musician for 20 years. So there's a lot of links that are pointing to me and to Data Honor as a band. So it's just kind of, I think more than that, it's accumulated.
Because the thing is, it's still really difficult, because Wikidata is actually quite easy to sort of go down and it takes a while to figure it out, but it's not as well, it's not as peer reviewed, so you don't get stamped on quite so quickly if you do anything on Wikidata. I don't go on any of them, because I know that I'm going to get crapped on straight away. If I touch anything, it's going to go bad. And so I try and avoid them. But I can't see, if you look at the rules within Wikidata, you can't seed a brand new idea without already having a reference to another idea within Wikidata. So if you are a member of a band, Nikki, and Nick, and the band's names are listed as the band is already in there, then you have an identity within Wikidata, and you can move from there. What's hard is to go in there and say, hey, okay, I'm going to put my name in there as for no apparent reason. So getting into the data sources is not so easy, but certainly feasible.
Okay, I've got one that I've been getting asked, and really it's sort of about structured data, and we haven't really talked that much about structured data today yet.
Yeah.
And this idea about structured data, and probably one of the most powerful functions in structured data is the same as function, right?
Okay.
This concept of just keep putting more same as into your schema and referencing referencing entities within your schema. I mean, is there a limit? Should we keep doing this? Are we going to overdo it?
Of course you shouldn't. I don't think you should. I mean, the problem is that so yeah, and that's exactly what Inlinks is doing on the schema. It's looking at the page, breaking it down into entities, and then putting the main entities in as the same as schema, and it's saying, right, this is same as this Wikipedia entry, because we know that Google can understand the Wikipedia entry, so therefore, if we say this content is about this, then it makes it very, very clear. But if you start to try and turn that into the equivalent of keyword stuffing, which is what I can see, people. A whole load of SEO is about to do. I think that's pretty quickly going to break down, because if your web page is about 50 things, then what you're going to try and do is make all of your 50 pages all about 50 things, and you're going to completely cannibalize any concept of your content anyway. So cannibalization is an important part of this, and with Jerry saying it's about quality over quantity, I think these kind of ideas match, because if you write 2 really good pages on how to tie a bow tie because your site is on ties and fashion, then that's a real problem, because you have just completely wrecked it. And then you put your schema going to, your same as going to 2 different things, and it becomes a big challenge. So at Inlinks, we ban you from having, I say ban, you can only associate a topic with one page. So you can only have one page that's about a bow tie, assuming that there's an article on Wikipedia about a bow tie. You could have it, this one's bow tie, but only wants to get internal links from concept of fashion, and then this one's bow tie that's only getting concept of, I don't know, whatever, dinner jackets or something like that. So you can play around with that around the edges. But if you are going to just push your same as schema in the same way that you push keyword stuffing, or meta keywords as it was back in Peter and my days, then you're not going to get very far, because you only want to use that same as once in your whole website for each one.
Okay, that's a very good. Thank you for helping us to think of that. Now, there's a couple of questions. Matthew Hayes, there's a question that came up on the screen. Matthew Hayes says, how can I find entities that already exist within Google Knowledge Graph which relate to a brand? Is there a way to leverage them to push a brand into the Knowledge Graph?
Okay, so the question's in 2 parts. So you can, of course, you could. So if in Inlinks, if you put the brand into Inlinks, or possibly into Google, but we'll basically go and have a look at all the things that are coming back and find all the topics associated with that brand. The other thing that you could do is put the content that brand has got into Google's knowledge NL API text box, and also find the kind of things that they're talking about. You can also go to SEMrush, of course, and put the brand in there, and that will show you the kinds of web pages that are coming back, and also they've got some topic information there as well. So I think, or you can find the keywords, and once you found the keywords that they're ranking for, you could use that as a proxy for topics if you wanted to. Is there a way to leverage these ideas to push the brand into the knowledge graph? Again, we go back to what are the data sources for populating the knowledge graph in the first place. And there's no doubt that Wikipedia here controls all the cards. They are the biggest player. And if you've got a brand that's worthy of being in Wikipedia, then go and get it into Wikipedia. I find it really, really bloody hard. I haven't put Inlinks into Wikipedia because I'm just scared that somebody's just going to kick me out. I think that Simon says he got into Wikipedia in January. And got stamped and removed in February. So yeah, okay. So there we go. So Wikipedia editors hate us. What they're not realizing is that in their hate of us, they're also manipulating the knowledge graph as well, and that's a double standard that I don't think's acceptable, and I think it's a problem for the knowledge graph as well as for us, in that the bias is going to carry on going if we can't get around it. But in in answer to Matthew's question, yes, there is. And I think that there's a lot to be said for, working around those things and getting yourself into Crunchbases and getting yourself into the IMDb's and stuff. But writing a good book is a good thing with an ISBN number, because you can then use that as a reference within another Wikipedia or Wikidata article, and using and then you can do the same sort of thing with scholarship papers and those kind of things. So if you start by referencing authority material that's defined as an authority as that way, that is related to the company, then that is a way to generate the actual valid Wikipedia entry. Because when you start creating a Wikipedia entry, it's starting to talk to knowledge articles that are already within the Wikidata environment. And that's the trick, is getting data sets that are already in the Wikidata environment so that the references within Wikipedia are self-reinforcing. But I'm just learning too.
We're all learners.
This is the thing. I mean, I am not pretending that this is an easy game, because of course it wasn't designed to be easy. What I am worried about is that the people that can play around with Wikidata, Wikipedia, with great ease and stamp on Simon Cox and stuff like that, I think are the ones that hold the power or the keys, but also they're not doing society as much good as they might think by locking people out.
Well, let's hope. I mean, let's hope for the best. I mean, we know how things, good things can be ruined. So let's. Hope that
Tony Wright said to me once. Yeah, there's as soon as you've got a bright shiny thing, give it to an SEO and he will break it.
Or she.
I've got some other questions here from that were pre-submitted, and I just feel like we've got probably around about 10 minutes left, and I just want to get to some of these questions that people submitted before the webinar. And Nick, feel free to also jump in with any questions. But I just wanted to Jacob Stanley from Studio Hawk. He's got a very straightforward question. This may be related to what we're doing, but it's link building related. So, how do you scale link outreach? Do you have any approach for that?
Yeah, well, my approach is don't. My approach is try and scale influencer outreach, and then allow the influencers the ability to say something about you before you do. So my game plan for that is timing. So if I've got a new product that's about to launch, then I'll tell the influencers first. And the influence is very specific. I'm not talking about, Beyonce or people like that. I'm talking about very, very specific people to my industry, and give them the information first. Tell them the landing page of where it's going to launch. Give them, exclusive demos if they want them, and spend a week beforehand letting them know before you put it out in your newsletter. Don't launch your stuff by putting it out in the newsletter, because then no influencer wants to be seen to be the guy or girl, sorry, Nick, with secondhand news. They don't want to. Their raison d'etre is to be seen as the one with the news. They don't have to understand the news necessarily. They've got to say it first. That's the job of the influencer, or the role, their role as an actor in the game. And I think that if you see that and you try not to be the person that promotes your own stuff, then that's the game. So you need to work on scaling the communication and then the network, your network of influencers, rather than scaling the links per se.
Great.
So essentially, you want to make sure that people are like you're wanting to change the intent, like from I think what I was trying to get at is like, you know, how does one measure that? Because like one would do that with brand mentions, correct? But I guess like traditionally, and maybe I'm a bit naive in saying that that's sort of seen more as like a vanity metric, whereas like backlinks is something that we can measure. We can't necessarily measure the direct influence all the time, but we can definitely see that, okay, with a better qualitative backlink, with organic traffic and with like real organic users, that equates to some benefit to a site. So is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, well, I measure it. I mean, I've been brought up with Majestic, so you know, I use citation flow or trust flow because I know that I know citation flow is pretty damn close to the PageRank methodology, and I know trust flow has some extra elements in there which I kind of like as well. And you can plug Majestic, by the way, if you've got a Majestic account and a SEMrush account, you can plug the Majestic stuff into the back end of the SEO audits within SEMrush. They built that functionality in.
So I purposely didn't say domain authority.
Well, that's probably best because anything at the domain
out of respect.
But that's my knowledge.
Let's quickly.
Pete's moving me on before I start talking about the wrong brands. Sorry.
No, I just. Let's talk about Majestic for a minute. Peter McKinovic has a question. How can we use the Majestic API to get insights in a dashboard report that clients would find useful or interesting? I think you kind of started answering that question there.
Yeah, if you've got access to the Majestic API, then well, an easy way to do it is there is I don't know if it's still working because I'm not with Majestic anymore as on the day-to-day, although I still wave the flag, obviously. But you can put stuff into Google Sheets. If you're a programmer, then just follow the API stuff on Majestic. If not, you can put stuff into Google Sheets and go from there. So I guess that's a conversation that's beyond this presentation. And also, you know, my programming skills are rubbish, mate. So you don't want to ask me that.
So maybe just to kind of bookend this. So to be able to get a knowledge graph for your brand, it is a long, arduous road. But I guess like if one were to lay down a roadmap per se, that would be with optimizing your content, ensuring that technical on-site is like well looked after, and that you've got a community and an audience that know you and that care about you and wants to basically link to you. I'm trying to link this instead of like from a backlink perspective more to like maybe an influencer perspective, because essentially you're wanting to just grow your brands, and that's what you're wanting to do, and that will eventually get a knowledge graph. Am I correct in thinking this?
Yeah, there's also one thing that Christine Schlesinger can't pronounce Schlesinger, no one can point out. I think it's well worth saying, which is well worth saying, is that there's knowledge graph has two meanings. There's a knowledge graph, the knowledge graph, as in Google's knowledge base, not Google's knowledge graph, the things on the right hand side of the search results, and there's knowledge graphs. And I think that we should all start by thinking of our own websites as their own knowledge graphs, not just our websites actually, but our own ecosystem as its own knowledge graph, and then trust that becomes so well defined that it starts to get into the main knowledge graph. But getting into the main knowledge graph is all about being seen as the world authority in a given topic, so that it would be absolutely wrong for anybody to talk about that topic without using the same as schema and then linking to you, if you see what I mean, metaphorically as much as anything. So it's about being the world's best on a given topic, but that topic can be very, very narrow. And once you're in there, then you can expand out relatively quickly.
Awesome.
Thank you. One more question, because I want to get this one in, because this was specifically asked earlier on. Corey Wolf, he asks, how do we convince our senior management to get on board with starting to do semantic search, semantic SEO methods?
Great question.
I think the best way I've seen, I think this idea of showing them that Google is building a massive, great big encyclopedia, and if you're not in the encyclopedia, then you're nowhere, is probably the way to talk to it, because they can understand the idea of an encyclopedia. I know there's plenty of people say it's not an encyclopedia, but it's a good way to explain it to a CEO. If Google are bypassing the websites, or rather, in between the websites and the user is an encyclopedia, and you're not communicating properly with that encyclopedia, then you fucked it. That's how I'd say it, Corey. You use those exact words.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. I think that's all we've got time for, unfortunately. But anyway, yeah, I personally have so many more questions, but
I think it's a great note to end things on right there.
I think so. Dixon Jones, you've been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much for your time. Just again, like, where can people find you after this?
Well, dixonjones.com. You can find me, or Dixon_Jones on Twitter, or come to inlinks.net. Obviously, I'm happy to pin that out. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah,
been,
absolutely.
Amazing.
Yes.
Great.
So
thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciated it. Apart from the fact that you guys have such a crazy time zone, that has been, going to bed last night, I thought, I can't drink. I've got to worry about it. But that's fine. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And of course, if you're listening, subscribe to SEMrush. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button if you enjoyed that. And we do have 4 hours of EAT. So we'll leave those links in the description below. So make sure you sign on to that, because there will be furthering of this discussion to really deep dive into that. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, and happy SEOing. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.